Hey everyone, today we are at the Connecticut Beaver Swamp and we're checking out the area, giving an update today, seeing what's going on. So, on first inspection coming here, I noticed a lot of areas where the ice is white. You can tell this went through a recent drop of about a foot of water. What would cause such a drop? That means there was a beaver dam here and somebody obviously removed it. Nothing's here. This time of year, with the ice, it's just about impossible for the beavers to build back because they need open water without ice to be able to float over materials. Beavers are active in the wintertime, but they tend to stay underneath the ice and go back into their lodge when they need air. Beavers store all their stuff for the winter, their food. They work all summer creating a big supply of sticks. They sink it in the pond, and that's what they survive on throughout the winter, so they don't have to leave the pond. This right here is a secondary pond, which means there won't be any harm to the beaver if it was to be drained like it is, someone did. A primary beaver pond where the beaver actually lives, that's usually a death sentence because when the water's gone, all the entrances to their lodge are going to be exposed to predators. And with the drop and everything frozen, they can no longer get to their food supply. Yes, they can go into the woods and get new, material, but the problem is mostly predators. When it's really cold like that, yes, I did actually see a beaver years ago on one of my trail cameras walking in the snow, but that's very rare when a beaver's actually out in the wintertime. I hear the train coming. The tracks are right there. We should see that by the time the video's over. But anyways, this I'm going to assume was done by the DOT. Oh, cool. Look at all the water beetles swimming underneath the ice. Or no, those are water skimmers. Maybe both. So the DOT put the big pile of debris, which is mostly grass, mud, right here. Very fresh. It's still very stinky. This is where they threw it. So by the looks of it, they most likely put an excavator bucket down there, and a guy manually loaded the bucket and then dumped it here. That's what I would assume. It's right next to the failed beaver deceiver. This thing used to be in the end of the culvert, turned around with the T out in the water, and the water comes up through the bottom and then into the pipe. This tricks beavers for a while, but they usually figure it out within a year. And if a beaver has dealt with one of those before, it won't work at all. Even if there's screens on those holes, they'll chew into it and block it up anyways. Yep, that thing would have been here. Yep, the first time I ever discovered this place, it was crossing the road. It has to come up about maybe 5 feet above capacity before it'll start crossing. That train we heard may have stopped, because I do believe there might be 2 tracks there. One of them is where they put cars for storage. Look at this. There's a tank here I never noticed. See that? So we're going to go down here, take a look at this. Good inch thick. A lot of times when a beaver floods a place for the first year, this place here, this swamp has been here for decades. I've always remembered it being here. But when a beaver first floods an area, it's a forest before they eventually cut them down or they drown. Like all the dead trees here you see were drowned when the beaver made the water level go up. Just too much water for the tree, so they died. Anyways, if there's a whole bunch of trees like in videos I've made in years past, the ice will actually stay suspended, holding on to the trees. But everywhere else, it goes down with the water. If the water's completely gone, it crinkles like on the edge. You see it just goes down, it just shatters without the water supporting it. But some areas where you do have things like cattails supporting it, it stays upright, which is pretty cool. It's always fun to break that stuff. Oh, right here is pretty cool too. How it's all still supported on this dead tree. That's a beer bottle. And a bunch of bones. Look at that. I know we did see a lot of dead beavers here once. They must have got hit crossing the road. I don't know why they wouldn't just use the culvert pipe to get across. But the culvert pipe may have been completely blocked at that time by them. The beaver pond is actually a lot bigger than it looks from the road. Around the corner, maybe about 300 feet, is where the culvert pipe was, where I was just showing the water loss. This whole area here floods all the way back in here. This is how much water the beavers build up. At their maximum, there's probably over 1 million gallons of water here in this large area. You see here was also frozen, and you see the water went down. The ice isn't that developed here. You see how it's very, very thin, and around the edge here where the ice definitely was has already melted. It's because there's a lot of mud here, very swampy here. Swamps with mud, a lot of decaying leaves, lots of organisms generate heat. So in the first place, it's warmer. Ice is harder to form, probably was never as thick, but especially sitting here in the sun, it was able to melt really fast, especially with the heat from below and above. Now, if you take a look right here, this could have been from the summertime when I did some uncloggings, or it could have been recent, but at some point this year, these lily pads will tell you how deep it was right here. See that? About right here. This would have been up on the surface of the water. That's as long as the stem grows. As the water slowly goes up, it will extend its stem, but it cannot shrink its stem. So this is about where the water was earlier this year. That may have started growing. I actually think it started growing after I did uncloggings, because I unclogged it one time earlier this year. That pipe, only a few inches of it were showing. So we got probably 2.5 feet, maybe more, of water drained one time in the early summer. And you can see where this grass is growing. Typically there's water up to around here surrounding it. All these grass plants are like tiny little islands surrounded by water. A lot of these channels may have been made by the beavers. They do excavation when they flood an area, or when they haven't yet made the dam tall enough to flood it. They will actually excavate little canals into the woods so they can retreat back into them if they see a predator. The canals can actually also be used for floating back sticks from deeper in the woods, especially when they deplete the tree supply that's right against the water. You see, they have a ton of stuff to work with here. When they flood this, they can cut down all these little trees, float them all the way back down there. But what happens when they run out of trees? If you have a big family of beavers constantly building dams, fighting the DOT, having to find new materials every time it's taken out, beavers will not reuse materials unless they are so desperate and they have nothing else around. Beavers won't use dead trees. They're not easy to cut. They don't use them. They want living trees. They're soft on their teeth, easy to cut down, easy to get a whole bunch of stuff. But if they're desperate, they will reuse it. But usually they have a good supply of stuff. It's pretty rare when we find a beaver swamp that's just petrified trees and nothing growing around the edges. That is pretty uncommon to find, so we usually don't have to worry about them taking the pile we made next to the culvert. And I am glad that Connecticut's drought seems to be about over. When I was here in late summer, I was actually a little concerned about this place. There was the slightest little trickle. I don't even know if I'd consider it a trickle. It's like oozing, but now you see a good amount of water coming through here. This place could easily fill back up in a couple of days if the beavers plugged it. Just sitting here enjoying the area, waiting for the train. I heard it go toot toot. Hopefully it's coming this direction. Maybe not. Anyways, I'm looking down right here. And just imagine if the beavers were smart enough to know what kind of headache they would cause for the DOT and myself if they just purposely built the dam in the middle of the culvert. Yes, we do encounter that often, but I don't think they're doing it on purpose. Maybe they realize it's harder for us to get to it. Look at this. It's like a newt or a salamander down in the water. But anyway, sitting here, I'm realizing Remember I mentioned, I think that somebody manually got the junk out of here into a excavator. I don't think that's true now that I'm taking a better look. You see how it's deep right in front of the culvert? It looks like a few scoops were done. And every time I've unclogged this in the past, the beavers block it on the edge, but then they build kind of behind it as a reinforcement. With that amount of water, if the excavator took a scoop getting rid of half of the dam, there's a good chance the rest of it pushed through. There's also big excavator marks carved here into the concrete that weren't here a couple months ago. More scuff marks here. At least it's not a culvert that can be easily damaged by an excavator. Don't see any really severe damage at all. There's another pretty cool creature down there also. Let's take a look at it. What is this guy? Does anyone know what that is? The creature right there in the middle of the screen? Never seen anything like that. I can hear the ice cracking. Somebody threw a bag of garbage out there. Also at this beaver pond, I've showed this in previous videos. There's this really old chair that looks really cool out here. Another plastic chair. This looks like it was some homeless guy's camp at some point. No remnants of a tent or anything, but there is a whole bunch of clothing right here. I'm gonna go ahead and clean all this up. This person's never coming back for that stuff, nor would they want it. It's all starting to decompose. I'm gonna grab all this clothing, put it in a pile next to the road, and the DOT can take that away. I'm also gonna grab a garbage bag, and I'm gonna go and collect. There's a good amount of plastic bottles you may have noticed around the culvert area. All right, a lot of that clothing was actually kind of hard to get off the ground. It had tree roots growing through it. And some of the clothing, you can see pieces of it. It was actually starting to decompose. Let's quickly get this up to the road. There was 2 hats in there. This one is all on its way of decomposing. But I know a lot of clothing is made out of plastics, and that'll just become microplastic, like this especially, as that breaks down. So this right here says Sturbridge Police. That's actually a really cool shirt. See it all decomposing? Communications. So maybe this was the dispatcher's shirt. What's this one say? Straighten that out. Army. Where's that other hat? Anyways, it's a Boston Red Sox hat somewhere in here. I don't know where it is. It's somewhere in this big pile of clothing. I'm gonna try to ball all that up. Maybe I can even get it out to the road in one shot. All right, got it up to the road. A lot of those actually used to be pretty cool hats. Some of those shirts were pretty cool too. One of them had a fluorescent American flag on the back of it. Or I mean a reflective American flag on the back. It's like safety gear. It was pretty cool. So I wonder if the person living out here used to be a former dispatcher maybe. Alrighty, so that pile of clothing and 1 garbage bag. The DOT will be sure to grab that. They always do. Thanks for watching, everyone. Have a great day.